Right now, I'm in the middle of my research for doing my thesis, and the title of it is Leading Between the Lines, Trust, Power, and the Invisible Load. Because I see this happening in corporations, I see it happening to individuals all the time, but I also see how our world is not trusting. And so for me, it's like, how do I have some kind of impact to help people navigate trust, power, leadership, and really be authentic to who they are, but recognizing how that impacts others?
Welcome to Working Women Mentor, the podcast that delivers mentorship in every conversation. Each episode, we meet remarkable women who share the real moments, challenges, and breakthroughs that shape their journeys. These are stories that inspire, empower, and remind us of what is possible. I'm your host, Rainey Alfers, and I cannot wait for you to meet today's guest. Let's jump in and uncover your next mentor moment.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Working Women Mentor. I'm your host, Rainey Alfers, and today we're talking about intentional leadership, how to grow, influence, and lead with authenticity in every chapter and season in your career. My guest, Vicki Bradley, is a dynamic leader and mentor who's passionate about helping women discover their strengths and create success that aligns with the vision and the values that you have individually, not just what the world thinks it should be like. Vicki's approach is incredible. She has clarity, she has compassion, and she really understands how we can move our dial and how to help us do that. And in this episode, we get to talk about what it means to lead with intention. And we're all leading somewhere, whether it's in our home or in work or with our friends. And listening to this episode, you are going to think about confidence and confidence without burnout and mentorship and sharing what you know. So let's get started and meet the incredible Vicki Bradley. Here we go.
Vicki Bradley, it's so good to have you. Welcome to Working Women Mentor. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. It's so awesome to see you again, and I'm honored and thrilled to be here.
I am so excited for our podcast today. So let's get started. Would you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, happy to. So I'm Vicki Bradley. I'm the CEO and founder of Women in Leadership Empowered. I'm a huge catalyst for change, champion of women, host of the Women in Leadership Talk podcast, which Rainey actually joined me on not too long ago. So make sure you check out that episode. I'm a constant learner. I really spend a lot of time, Rainey, focusing on conscious leadership and helping leaders really look at how are we responding versus reacting to all the crazy situations that, we come up against in life and in our professional careers. But in essence, that's who I am. I'm a champion of others, and thrilled to be here to talk about mentorship and, just share some of my experiences with your audience today.
And I'm so excited to have you on the other side of the table today. So,
Thank
Vicki,
you.
one of our favorite things is to ask guests to text a friend and see how they would describe you and share that with us on air, because we all need that bit of encouragement, but they've known you the longest, right? Did you have anyone respond to you?
Oh, yes, always.
Okay.
And even a common theme that comes back from friends and people who know me well, clients, even they're like, oh my God, you're the Energizer Bunny. Because I'm always into new things and I have a lot of energy and I bring a lot of energy to whatever I'm participating
I can
in.
confirm that. And they've known you longer than I have.
Yeah, so that's a normal. And often they will say, oh my God, you're so confident, Vicki. And I'm like, I am in most aspects of my life, but sometimes there's places in our lives that we're not as confident in. And so I do remind them that maybe because I'm really confident here doesn't mean I'm confident in everything, but that's a common theme that comes back from friends.
100%. And that confidence comes from somewhere. You've had over 25 years in leadership and retail and different corporate and executive careers. Is there some defining moment that you can think of that has really pulled you into where you are today and helped you become this leader and this educator and this visionary in your space?
Oh, thank you. That's such a great question. And, something, Rainey, I've actually reflected on a lot, especially because now I have a son who's graduated university and he's looking at what's next. And, one of the pieces of advice I gave to him is just say yes. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, well, part of the acceleration and success I've had in my career was always about seizing the opportunity, or carpe diem, right? Like it seize that moment, seize that opportunity. And just because you do, it doesn't mean you're defined and shackled to that for your life. But it's like, what do I learn from that? And I think part of that success comes from the fact that I look at things and I go, okay, what did I learn from this? How do I utilize that in my life? And I had one person in my career that, well, I've had many, I will say that. I've had many people in my career, but I had this one boss, and I want to share that a little bit because I attribute a lot of my success to him. But I had spent like 10 years at one organization and he recruited me away.
Oh, wow.
And it was so fascinating because my whole career from before I met him was focused on operations and sales. And then when I met this man, we were in a turnaround situation and he was like, I hear these things about you. And so he recruited me. And it was how he put me in places that stretched me beyond belief. Like I had always just done sales and operations. And I say just, that's a huge role. But all of a sudden, he's like giving me things like, okay, we want you to redesign the store. And all of a sudden, I'm working with designers and we're building. And then he got me involved in the marketing and the buying and color selection and things that I had never been exposed to. And so he was always pushing me for how do I continue to grow? How do I continue to expand my knowledge bank, that wisdom? And I think that honestly, that instilled something in me that now I have this thing where it's like, I'm always wanting to learn. I'm always wanting to grow. I want to try things. And so that curiosity is a very natural state. And I give him a lot of credit for that.
And it sounds like, he stretched your ability also to believe in the multifacets of yourself, right? You
Yes.
have many facets and you were focused on these key areas. And now it's like, once you can accomplish that, it's like, ooh, there's other stuff out there. Like it helps you dream a little bigger about your skill set because It's a great point. And like, we're always thinking, oh, I do X, Y, Z. Well, no, actually you do that now, but we can upskill, we can be curious, we can tap into talents that we didn't even realize we have. And that's really a beautiful story. And so I'm curious, how did you do all of this at the time, stretching yourself beyond, learning new things, full-time position? And I'd love to hear about that combined with motherhood, because those of us on the podcast who might have kids, what was that like for you? Any advice for us?
Yes. So your support system is everything, right? Like I will often get that question, especially from young career, people who are aspiring to really accelerate their career. They're like, oh, I can't have both motherhood and my career. And I'm like, well, that's actually not true. You can. I mean, you just have to make different choices. Right. And life is about choices.
It's all about choices.
Yeah. And one of the most, powerful things you can do as a woman is co-create and have a child and bring that child into the world. But also, it's also teaching your children to be independent, self-sufficient, that you can have a career and be super successful and you can raise your kids, but you cannot do that alone. And your support system is everything. Sadly, in my situation, I got very sick and my husband and I split up and my kids were very young. And I mean, in hindsight, it was the best thing that ever happened, but
yeah, the time it felt pretty tough, I'm sure.
Right. But network that I had around me, and, I shared with you, Randy, I live in Canada and my family's all from the States. And so I had no family where I was either. And so my friend group, my colleagues, like I really, really had to lean in on those that supported me, whether that was at work or whether that was at home. And I can't say enough about that. For women that are listening, build your tribe, build your cohort, build your, whatever you want to call them, build your team around you that supports you both professionally and personally. And I wouldn't have survived it had I not had that, to be quite honest.
It's good advice and a good reminder, because often we think about it in positive times. Build the tribe, right? Find the people you want to align with. But we forget that the reason we want that is for good and bad times, right?
Exactly.
It's for those times where you need them. And so as you are still stretching yourself and working on your PhD, tell us about that, because I know that it's going to put into practice in your career and your business that you have. But what led you back to school?
Oh, wow. Great question.
A lot of that. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. And before I forget, there is one more thing I want to say about your last question, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Often women, we hate to ask for help. And
Very
that's
true.
been coming up a lot. I just don't want to miss this, right? I'll come back to education, but women, we have been raised to believe we have to do it all ourselves. And this comes up a lot in the groups that I facilitate and the women that I coach, I have a hard time asking for help. And what I want to remind people is that when you ask for help, you're actually gifting someone else where their language, their love language might be to give, to help, to gift. And so ask for that help. People always are there to support you. I mean, it can't be all the time for everything, but really, think about who do I need that's going to help me navigate this situation that I'm in. So I just wanted to say that, Randy, only because that's such a hot topic.
It is. And, from that same perspective we think of it as we're taking from someone,
Exactly.
When you say find someone you need, it's like, the first thing that pops in my head is like, but I don't want to take from them. Right. But it's like, how would you suggest we change that mindset? I mean, I know you said, hey, it helps them. It might be their love language, but how can we build up the habit internally? I mean, is it about assessing what we do really need help with first? I mean, truly being aware is, I think, the first problem we have, because we're usually in denial about it. We're just like, no, I've got it. It's all good. And that, I feel like, is denial a lot of the times, for myself included, friends,
Me
colleagues.
too.
Yeah. I mean, it's even small things, right? Oh, no, I'm good. I'll get the dishes tonight. But it's like, no, I really have so many other things to do. Do you mind getting the dishes? Small to big problems. What do you think about that? How do we get better?
I also have been very guilty of this, right? It's like, okay, I have the weight of the world on my shoulders. And I had asked a group of women that at that part of my mastermind group, I had sent them the question, what's the invisible load that you carry, right? And they were like, oh my God, that's such a big question. And I've had to ask myself that, because we do think we have to carry it all ourselves. And so for me, like, one thing that I do is I'll step back and I'll say, how am I feeling about this? Like, I really do a check-in with my gut. Do I feel like I have the weight of the world on my shoulders? Am I feeling like I'm completely alone in whatever? Like right now, I'm, doing a lot of caregiving with my mom. And I have felt like I've had the weight of the world on me because I'm, between two countries, I'm professional, I'm doing my PhD, as you mentioned. Like, there's a lot going on. Plus, I have young adults. I've had to really tap into others to help me with that. And so then it's figuring out, who do I trust to help me with that, right? And how can I utilize their strengths to help in areas that I just don't have the capacity to do? And also, it makes them feel good, right? And so how's that person actually responding when you do ask? Most of us want to be asked. I would say the catalyst is, if we don't ask, that person feels like, well, does Vicki not trust me enough to come and ask me for that help?
And then on the other side of that coin, I feel like we're thinking, why aren't they asking?
Right,
Do
exactly.
they not see me, that I'm potentially invisibly struggling here, right? And it's always a different side of the coin.
So it's playing that out mentally, that narrative. It's playing it out. And where am I in this situation? How am I feeling about it? Who is my confidant? Who is my strength? Like, I said to somebody, I was at my mom's in May, and my son had come with me, and like, he completely stepped up. And it was the first time that my kids, because now they're young adults, but it was the first time they had been able to step up. And I got so emotional. I said, oh my God, like, my son took on the responsibility of cooking all the meals, getting the grocery list ready, like all these things. And and it seems like a little thing, but it was such a relief off of me that I could just take care of my mom, do the doctor's appointments, do all those things. But he then turned around and he got so much pride and confidence from that, because he was like, Mom, of course I'm helping you. And I was like, no, you don't understand. Like, I really feel like you have my back, and I am so grateful for that. So it is that recognition. Yes, both ways.
I love that. Like, that makes my eyes water almost, because it's like something that you've probably needed for a long time too, right? And they're finally at this adult stage to help you with it. I think that's really beautiful. I think it is. Well, I want to go back to education too, because I mean, part of this is you just continuing to stretch, continuing to see yourself. What is that like for you right now?
Yeah. And thank you. Like, when I made the decision to go back and do my PhD, I made the decision at the end of COVID.
Okay.
So things were a little different. Time was a little different.
Did you enroll right during COVID? Okay.
Of course.
Okay. I get it.
And for me, it was that stretch, right? It was the learning. It was all about like, how do I continue to expand my own thinking? How do I get different perspectives, right? And I hadn't been in school in forever. And so there was also that fear, Randy, because I was like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to keep up with all these youngsters from a technology perspective? And, the first 3 months was really tough. And then I got into this groove and I loved it. I loved it. And I do love it. Right now, I'm in the middle of my research for doing my thesis. And the title of it is Leading Between the Lines, Trust, Power, and the Invisible Load, right? Because I see this happening in corporations. I see it happening to individuals all the time. But I also see how our world is not trusting. And so for me, it's like, how do I have some kind of impact to help people navigate trust, power, leadership, and really be authentic to who they are, but recognizing how that impacts others and where those barriers are, where's the breakdowns. And when you hear these different perspectives and how people view things, there's a lot of magic that comes from that because you see how there's so many common threads from no matter where you're from.
You're seeing it from an eagle eye almost when you're looking at all of this.
It's amazing. Like I just had 2 big groups that I took through some group sessions around the questions of my thesis. And it was just so rich. It's the best way I know how to say it. Like I left there so energized because, when you hear the context that comes from people and the vulnerability that comes from people and that sharing, it's like, oh my gosh, we are all so connected as beings in this world. And I think we lose sight of that often. And so from an education perspective, it's more about like I've had to learn to read and write all over again. And that in itself has been interesting. But just the discovery and the curiosity and bringing these different industries together to look at wicked problems and figure out how do we collectively, navigate, not necessarily solve because problems are always evolving, but
right.
It's how do we navigate it based on where we are and, what's happening in our lives.
And I have to ask because you mentioned some of your biggest fears going back to school too, right?
Yeah.
So did you do okay with the technology, Vicki? Like, did everyone all the youngsters, were they okay with you? Like, did what you build up in your mind actually come to fruition? Or is it like we always do? Like we paint the worst picture and then it all works out?
It did work out. There were a lot of pain points. I will not lie. I've learned a lot. I will say that through, the last several years. Lots of support, including from my kids, because they've grown up in this era of technology. And so I think one of the things that's been really interesting is me being able to ask my kids for help and saying, okay, I don't know how to do this. And, how do I do this? And them stepping in and saying, oh gosh, Mom, that's easy. And so, it's the role reversal that takes place. And then the cohort that I'm in, like, so many amazing people and all of us going through it together and lots of support, lots of help. And, when you go back to university, it opens up you see so many opportunities in even how things are being taught because there's an expectation that, you just figure it out. And there is some of that, right? And knowing that everything is figure outable. And so that would be a big message I would say to our audience is, don't let the fear pull you backwards. Have that fuel you. And really looking at, okay, somebody's got to know how to do this. And that was really my approach. I mean, I did have a few moments. So I will not lie. I was like pulling my hair out going, what have I done? And why am I doing this? But you know what? I wouldn't trade it. These last couple of years have just been amazing.
Hey, working women, have you ever dreamed of starting a podcast but don't have enough time? I have been there. App chaos, endless Googling, tech rabbit holes, content grind, hours wasted, believe me, and not an episode live. That's why I am gifting you my free training, your complete blueprint to turn episode 1 into 30 days of AI-powered content. No overload, 2K of value inside. So go check it out. There's everything you need for week 1 launch and beyond. Visit workingwomenmentor.com/free training to claim yours now.
As you've been on campus, as you've been listening to thought leadership and the problems that are out there and the ways to communicate them, I'm curious how that has shifted your view of mentorship. in your community and amongst your colleagues and amongst your fellow students that you're with?
Yeah. I think, mentorship used to be kind of like, it was more of a scripted, everything had to be sort of,
Formal.
straight line, formal, straight line, straight path. Mentorship is very much a reciprocal, right? But that's also a mindset. And it's recognizing that you might be a mentor to someone, but they also can be a mentor to you, right? So when I'm having conversations with younger executives or somebody even who's starting out, like hearing their perspective, hearing how they even view situations, things that we might have thought, oh my gosh, that's devastating. And they're looking at it going, yeah, that's not a big deal. This over here is what's really happening, right? So that mentorship is a mutual benefit, I think, for both or all parties that are engaging in that experience. I think also it's recognizing that mentorship is not this formalized traditional path. It's those micro moments. And it's looking at, I just had this conversation with Randy. What am I taking away from that conversation, right? And how do I learn from that? And how will that potentially impact me going forward? Sometimes you don't know it in that moment, but years down the road, days down the road, weeks down the road, you might go, oh yeah, I remember when Randy and I were talking about that. And for me, that's my view on mentorship. And it's also helping people recognize that everybody has strengths. They just come in different packages. And so, again, it's being curious and learning from each other.
Creating that vault of what you hear and learn, and then also sharing it, of course. We hope that everyone is sharing their mentorship out there. And I love this story that you told about one of your mentors early on in your career. I think learning to stretch yourself has followed you through and opened your eyes to that. How do you see yourself in your coaching practice and in your business instilling some of those same qualities and helping others through mentorship? Because you're coaching, but there is a mentorship element to that. Would you agree?
Of course. Yeah, there is. What I love when I have a client say, let's say they are negotiating a new contract or they're interviewing for a job, and they'll say, Vicki, I had you in my head that whole time, right?
I love
and
that.
I'm like, what was I saying, right? And it was, I've got this. I'm the one that has the power. I'm in control of what's happening here. I'm being myself. I'm being authentic, asking yourself those questions. But I think, for me, it's really empowering individuals and helping people connect with who they are and their enoughness, because we see it all the time where people are doubting themselves. And I don't care who you are, every single person on this planet has something unique about them. And so it's finding that, right? It's finding that nugget and, helping them see the light within themselves, I guess is the best way that I want to say it. And so for me, mentorship is, it's also having the bold conversations and helping somebody to think about, it's not giving answers, but it's about thinking about where you are and where you want to get to, right? And
as opposed to solving
what's getting
a
in your
problem.
way. Mm-hmm. Exactly.
That's a really great perspective. And when you use that perspective, you've developed some frameworks and you've developed some processes to find those beautiful qualities into people, right? You have your energy leadership index and you also have your coaching frameworks that you work with. Will you share some of that with us and help us understand what those are, Vicki?
Yeah, happy to. So the Energy Leadership Index assessment, it's an attitudinal assessment that, it's ranked very high amongst all the different testing that you can do as a leader. And it's not about what's your personality type. It's not the ENTJ or any of that. It's very much about how do you show up when things are going great and how do you show up when you're stressed? And it teaches people a framework around how to choose, right? And you hear this often when people say, oh, I did that because I didn't have a choice. Well, you do have a choice. And so one of the ways that I work with clients, and it depends on what they're coming to me for, but one of the ways I work with them is helping them learn to respond and be very conscious of how they're showing up as a leader versus those knee-jerk reacting. Not easy because it's all about muscle building, but it's understanding that you have different choices. And so it's up to you to decide, how do I want to show up in this situation, right?
And muscle building.
You
have to muscle building. Yeah, I love that because you're saying we need to practice this, right?
100%. Often I use that analogy with clients. You can't go into the gym and think, okay, I'm going to go work out once and I'm going to come out and I'm going to have these massive biceps. No, you go every day, every other day, you're doing more reps, you're adding more weight to it. It's the same thing when you're building a conscious practice. I see leaders often take knee-jerk reactions, right? And it's easy to do because there's so much complexity. There's so much coming at you at every second. And sometimes you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to go. But if you can take that pause, that power of the pause to slow down for a second and ask, where am I at? How am I viewing this? How do I want to view this? How do I want to respond to this? You do yourself a greater service because we're a world of high anxiety, high stress people. And that is one way that you calm the stress in your body, in your mind, to just calm down. I practice this personally, Randy. If you want, I'll share an example of how I've used it, how it's changed my life. So I shared with you, I got really sick many years ago. And I was debilitated. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't walk. I looked like I was 100 years old. And I was just a mess. I could have over in my bed and said, I'm done with life, which there were moments I felt like that. But I really practiced these choices. And so it was recognizing I was showing up as a victim because I felt like this had been done to me. And I had to really step back and say, no, like I'm not a victim. I'm strong. I'm a fighter. And using the words that helped me get through that moment in time. And so when I get in high stress situations, I will step back and I'll go, okay, how do I want to show up in this situation? Is this a time when I need to show a lot of care and support for this individual because they may be in a high emotional state? Is this the time that I need to show up as a creator or an opportunist? So really me deciding how I want to show up. And choice is very powerful. When you know you have choice, your decisions have way more clarity. Your leadership is like off the charts because your people understand there's no ambiguity, right? They understand, okay, this is where we're headed. Yes, we had this failure. That's okay. We're going to choose to use this as a learning opportunity. And so for me, that's really about how to be more conscious. Another example I would share with you just quickly, I had a client who was terminated from her company and it was a reorg. So it wasn't like she hadn't done anything wrong. It was just they did a reorg and she was one of the people selected. And we practiced this because one of the things she had to do was go back to her boss after he fired her and ask him for a reference letter. She was really nervous about it. And she was like, Vicki, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, blah, 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 blah. And we worked on energy and helped her set, how do you want to walk into the situation? How do you want him to feel? How do you want to feel? The success she had, she was like, oh my God, that worked. And I'm like, yes, it does. Because energetically, she had already chose, I'm going to walk into this situation as X. Therefore, he met her where she was. He didn't know he was meeting her where she was, but she had set that tone energetically and very consciously. And so he wrote her a beautiful reference letter. They had a great lunch together, and she left there feeling good about herself, empowered. Yeah. So, I mean, it is very powerful when you take time, and we don't take time in this world.
No time? What? We're all in a hurry. We don't have time to do that. It's as you were describing it in my mind, I could almost see visual boxes of, equipping yourself because the first step for me is that recognizing who can I be in this situation? Not only who do I want to be, but who am I capable of being? And once we have that, once we actually know, and then also that vocabulary like that you gave yourself when you were sick, when you were feeling victimized, then you started using words to yourself that are hero words, right? More positive things. And I think that is, a great advice for the listeners. Vicki, thank you for that because often we don't have all the pieces of the puzzle. We know we could do better. We're just not sure what we needed to do better if we had those skills with us. So I think it's a great reminder that we all have those skills. It's just finding them, putting them in those places mentally, practicing them. That's beautiful advice. So you meet with a lot of women in the workplace, and I'm curious, what are you seeing that we are all normalizing as, no, that's just how it goes. Are you seeing some trends in this? I mean, clearly we all have an invisible load. Clearly, it's not clear, it's actually invisible. But what are you seeing with women? What are you advising? Talk to us.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the most, well, there's a couple of common themes. One is having the confidence to express your voice, right? There's a lot of fear around and that's not a new trend. I would say that has actually heightened because it's, oh gosh, will I lose my job? What will I do next? Can I find a job? So there's a lot of fear around just head
What's
down.
next? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, head down, get it done, don't make waves. So I think that's one, Rainey, that's happening. The other is burnout. That's very real, not just with women. I would say that's happening both with men and women. Women more just because, we take on the majority of the domestic load. And so, that is very real. And if you're in that sandwich generation like myself, you're raising your kids, but you're also caring for your parents and you have a career and in school and right. So you've got many.
And a personal life somewhere in there, Vicki, a personal life, right?
Exactly. And I would say that's the third piece is, people, we've always heard work-life balance. There is no such thing as balance, right? And some of us work is our hobbies and work is what we love. But it is finding, and it kind of goes into the burnout, but it is finding mechanisms and building it into your schedule, just like you would a meeting, right? Like making sure whether that's, I'm a gym person. So in the morning, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm in the gym. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, you'll find me walking. I'll do big power walks. So finding what fuels you, where do you have time to decompress, clear your head? And I've got my son doing this more now where he's walking, he's listening to his podcast or he's listening to something that he's like, why would I just be sitting and doing this? I need to move, right?
Yeah, right. Why not? Yes.
Yeah.
Those small daily habits, right? Something to fuel you, something to feed you, something to provide balance in the day when we don't have it in life, right? Right? I mean, it kind of balances what you need for yourself in that moment.
100%. And listen, I mean, the reality of it is whether you own your own business like myself, like Randy, right? Or you're working for a corporation, that mental narrative is the grind, right? It's the go, 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 go. We got to hustle. We got to do this. And we put ourselves last often. And, we'll do that later. We'll do that later. But there is so much truth and science to when you put yourself first, when you put that oxygen mask on you first, you then can fuel more of that. And it doesn't mean that you have to work hard. It's about working smart, right? Being able, I said saying yes earlier, but there's also the power of saying no, picking.
I'm glad you touched on that because when you said say yes a lot, I loved that you said that because it wasn't in the context of overstepping your boundaries, which is why we say no, right? We don't have an interest, we don't have time, whatever. We should say no. And we've been learning that as women, whether we're doing well at it or not, I don't know. But to say yes more about the things that you are excited about or that you might even be afraid of. Because why not? And I hate to use the carpe diem thing, right? But there's a little bit of that in there. It's like, you know what? I have an interest. My curiosity's piqued. What if? And playing with that and having fun with it is, we can't forget that with all the no's that we say. And hopefully, I hope that the more no's we say opens us up and our time to all the fun yeses, right?
Yes, exactly.
I mean, that's the goal. That's the balance. If you're going to find balance, that's where it should be.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's so powerful because that is where creativity comes from. That's where you're in most alignment, right? And I'll hear women say, oh my God, I feel so guilty. It's like, why do you feel guilty? And it's like, well, because, my husband had to take the kids to dance class or what. It's like, yes, that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity for him to bond with the kids.
That's right.
Right. Gives you an hour to yourself to go do yoga or go work out or, right? Everybody's happy. Trust him to do that. Because when you don't do it, then he feels like, well, she doesn't trust me with the kids. And I'm just using that as one example.
It's looking at the larger picture. It's my son, when he has time with his dad, for example, of course I want him all day, every day, around the clock. Of course I do. But how selfish if I wouldn't let him have wonderful time with his dad. I mean,
Yeah,
his dad's,
exactly.
incredible person and they have great bond. I mean, how could I keep that from him? So it's looking at what's in this for everyone and not just how do you feel about it? And I think we could all do a lot more of that in this world.
Exactly, Randy. And that's also true when you are the leader of teams, right? Because often we will turn around and we will tell people what to do. And this is something I work on with clients all the time. When you tell, you're taking the accountability and responsibility off that person. Because then they can just say, oh, well, Randy told me to do
Said
this.
to do that.
So I'm right. And so how you do anything is how you do everything. And so a lot of the practices that we're talking about that you can do personally are also applicable in your career, right? Because people do want to feel empowered. They want to feel heard, valued. And sometimes that's hard because, things are moving at such a quick pace. But when you do that, usually you have teams that are more engaged. They feel like they're contributing, and it's a win-win all the way around.
Vicki, give us on a quick note, just for how would you tell someone listening, how would you suggest they speak with their team and not tell the team what to do, but ask, encourage, empower the person on the team? Because it is hard for people to do that, by the way. It's a great point.
Well, I think, if we go back to grammar school and we think about the 5 W's, including how, tell me. So who, what, when, where, why. How, tell me. If you can start to practice asking curious questions using that framework, you will jump ahead light years, right? So if I said to you, Randy, I need you to do da 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 da, that's like, oh gosh, here we go again. Vicki's just giving me something to do. If I said to you, so Randy, we've talked about the project that we're working on. How do you want to start to approach that? What obstacles do you think are going to get in your way? How can I best support you? That's a very, very different conversation than me telling you what to do. And in the work that I do, the telling is very transactional. When we move to those curious questions and co-creating it together, that leads us more to transformational conversations. Because in a working world, or even when we're raising our kids, it's about how do we help them think critically? How do we help them feel empowered and engaged to participate? You feel valued, right? And I see it all the time in team dynamics when I'm working in companies with around the leaders that are telling, they are resented a lot and they're not always trusted, where when someone is, okay, we have a problem, we have a situation, how are we going to manage that? How are we going to go about it? And you bring that collective voice, you tend to get much more impact and results, and in a good way.
I feel like when you include the team, when you include, there are obviously certain pieces you've got to give some direction on, but gosh, in general, you get the buy-in, which is the end result, right? Nothing's going to work out if no one's bought in and believing it and doing it and following it. So
exactly.
Good team management there, Vicki. You've been wonderful today. Thank you for all of these beautiful nuggets and really the workplace and in life and of course, mentorship. Vicki, where can everyone find you and support you?
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for having me. I love having these conversations.
Pleasure. Gosh, thank you.
Oh, of course. My pleasure. So the best way to find me, I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So it's just Vicki Bradley or Vicki McClellan Bradley on LinkedIn, or you can find me at Will Empowered. That's 1L, Women in Leadership Empowered. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, but most active on LinkedIn and Instagram.
Wonderful. Vicki, thank you. I hope you enjoy time with your mom and take great care of those 2 young adults that are just completely supporting their mom and being along the side with you in your life and all that evolves. So, and I think you mentioned one of your sons will be in Dallas soon. So have to make sure we connect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'd love that, Randy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super grateful for this.
Thanks, Vicki. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care.
Hey, wait, before you go, I have one ask. Would you please leave us a review? Tapping on those stars on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you're listening to this will really help us. It'll spread the word and your voice and your impact as well, because every episode we are giving mentor moments. And I hope you can continue this conversation with us at workingwomenmentor.com. To apply to be a guest, find show notes and episode details. And if you've ever wanted to start a podcast, we've got the perfect course for you. Follow us on on Instagram at Working Women Mentor and DM us the word mentor, and I'll send you over our free guide on mentorship so you can incorporate it into your life. Thanks so much for joining us. And until then, cheers until the next episode.